What's going on, my Jets family? I am absolutely pumped. I am excited to be with you guys here on this Monday evening, on Victory Monday, the third Victory Monday in a row. Man, I am hyped. I can't wait to get into it. I'm excited, but as you guys can tell, I'm even honored, so honored that we got a Jet YouTube legend, Matt O'Leary, one of the guys who's been doing it since back in the OG days. Man, I'm so excited for you to be here with me, man. I appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Anytime. And it's always good. We were saying before we got started, it's always good after a Jets win to hop on and talk some ball.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we got Ant. Appreciate Ant and Jet out there. Everything trending upward. Let's go. Everyone's excited, man. It's not how I feel, but I'd love, for you to, share how big of a win this meant to you. Like what how big this is.
Yeah, it was really a big win for me because, obviously Green Bay didn't look their best the last couple of weeks. They were upset in London by the Giants, and then the week before barely escaped the game against the Patriots. So for me, just going into the game, my expectation was I think the Jets could win, but I think really just keep it close. It's Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau. Like that's a really tough ask to ask, this young team to go out there and beat them, especially considering, Green Bay was fresh off a loss and probably, likely motivated. But not only did the Jets beat them, they beat them pretty handedly. They won by 17 points. Their defense only allowed 10 points to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Jones was held in check. Like they checked literally every single box that they needed to do to win this game, and they won it handedly again by 17 points. It was never really that close. At halftime, yeah, it was a low scoring game at the half, but the Jets were the better team, and they showed it. And it's been an unbelievable ride right now, this 3-game winning streak. And now at 4-2, you control your own destiny a little bit as things start to shift now as you get closer to November and December.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. All that absolute positive stuff. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm overly hyped. I don't know, maybe you want to bring me back down, but I am absolutely hyped out of my mind about this win. I was talking about it on the post game show I do with Gino Jet yesterday. This was such a big win because, and you know how it is with the Jet narrative. You know how everyone likes to bring us down. Like right when we won this game, what's the first thing people were saying? Like, oh, it was against the not as good Packer team. But let's be real. They still have Aaron Rodgers, who's a future Hall of Fame quarterback. Their coaching staff is legit. They have a system that works. Those coaches have taken them to the playoffs. They've won before. And you just mentioned it. Yeah, maybe they don't have great receivers, but they have a hell of a running game that we kept in check. And they have a hell of a defense, a really, really good secondary. And we leaned on the running game. Man, this win to me, it felt like the culture change win we've been waiting for. Like, man, we are 4-2, like you said. We're 4-2. I think I looked it up before. I'm trying to remember the exact number off the top of my head. I think there's only five. I believe it's five. I think there's only 5 teams in the NFL right now that currently have a better record than us. Like, that's it. Like, we're not the bottom of the barrel Jets anymore. And, I've been talking about it with you guys, as you guys know in the channel, forever, right? Like, I believe in Joe Douglas. I believe this is the guy that's going to take us there and that our time is coming. But I felt like this game, and again, I'm so hyped, man. I feel like this was the game that shows us that our time is now. You said it. We go against this big Green Bay Packers team in Lambeau. We haven't won in Lambeau since 2006, and it snapped a 15-game home winning streak for Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Who snapped that streak? The Jets. So maybe I'm too optimistic, but man, I feel like this game is the Jets are here. The Jets have arrived. If we can beat the Packers, I don't know if you felt this way, the way I watched them play this game, again, just a great defensive matchup back and forth, holding them in check and then stepping it up at the end, especially the running game to win it against, people want to not say it, but against a quality team. Man, I'm almost ready to say we can beat anybody. Like, I'm ready. Like, I feel like this team, obviously there's still some things to get worked out, but this was the win we needed. This was the win that I feel shows us, man, we are here. The Jets have arrived. I don't know if you agree.
No, it's definitely it's a huge statement win for this coaching staff and this young team. I made a video, and it's like for Instagram that's going to come out later in the week, and it was like more of a rant, being like, what's the excuse this week? Because for their 3 wins, it was, oh well, it was a miracle win against Jacoby Brissett and the Browns. They played terrible defense, and then it was, oh, well, you only beat Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett making his first start. And then it was, oh, well, yeah, you put up 40 points against the Dolphins, but you played a third string quarterback. Like, what is that excuse now? Because the Packers, everyone had them in winning the NFC North, going far in the playoffs. They were a very popular pick to come out of the NFC for the Super Bowl. And the Jets hung in this game. And obviously in the second half, they dominated. They were just running it with Breece Hall right down their throats, and they couldn't stop anything, that was so cool to see. And the thing that I keep going back to is I feel like this Jets team, like they have a lot of young guys, and they're almost naive to the fact that they're supposed to be bad. Like they didn't get the memo that it's supposed to be the same old Jets. They're not supposed to do this, but they're young and they're a really fun team. I mean, Sauce Gardner running around with the cheese head on after the game, Breece Hall running for over 100 yards and a score. And like, if we're being honest, it probably wasn't the best Zach Wilson day, but it didn't matter because the defense picked him up. They had a great special teams day, and the running game was fantastic. So they've been really, really fun, and I think this win definitely changes expectations for the rest of the year.
I agree, man. I completely agree. And I see you guys in the chat. I appreciate all you guys out there. Seems like you guys are agreeing, right? Matthias is saying watching the game right now. Ant's pointing out that the play calling is improved. Matthias saying Jets, Jets, baby. We got Jets mess. Appreciate you out there, my man. Just saying, yo, whatever everyone wants to say. Appreciate all you guys. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. But this is huge. Like Matthias is saying, this team's only gets better from here. Like you said, Matt, this is a young team. This is a team that looks, again, like we expected things to come together, but this was a quality win. And you mentioned it. Everyone always likes to bring us down, right? The Jets won those games, but against not great quarterbacks, right? That's the story they like to tell. It didn't matter that Skylar Thompson actually played pretty well. Didn't matter that Jacoby Brissett actually played pretty well. All that mattered was who they were playing. And same thing here. You saw it. Like they're trying to spin it. We've seen it with, the Packers. They're not as good. They don't have the receivers, but this is a quality team. We know that. We know this is a quality team, especially beating them in Lambeau. Nobody's done that for 15 games. Who breaks that? The Jets, man. So I absolutely love it. And again, like you said, it changes everything. It changes the trajectory because a young team, Zach Wilson's grooving. It's only up from here. And you mentioned the two big play callers, man. Let's talk about Breece Hall. Like Breece Hall, not enough can be said about this kid. Like him and Sauce. Like I love the Garrett Wilson pick. I love JJ. Don't get me wrong. But the two of them look like superstars already. And they only just started their career. They're 6 games in. It's crazy. Breece Hall, man, I got the stats right here. I put it out. In the last 2 weeks, just the last 2 weeks, and he's a rookie, mind you, he had 38 carries for 213 rushing yards. That averaged over 5 yards a carry, 5.6, had 2 rushing touchdowns. He was targeted 4 times in the receiving game. He hauled in all 4 for 105 receiving yards over those 2 weeks, 318 total yards. He's been a wrecking ball. He's been a one-man show, and it's been so awesome to see him. Michael Carter is a great double punch to him, which is awesome. I feel like he compliments him great. But, man, Breece, if you want to share how you feel on Breece, but I feel like he's been unbelievable, paying such dividends so quickly, and he's just getting started. He looks like he could be one of the best running backs in the NFL. Hell, over the last 2 weeks, you could say he was the best running back in the NFL.
Yeah, it seems crazy, right? Because now I liked Sauce Gardner and Breece Hall coming out of the draft. I thought both were special talents and both were really great prospects and thought they would translate well to the next level. I didn't think they'd be this good right away. Like usually it takes a little bit of time for players to develop, especially maybe not as much running back because that's one of the easier positions to translate. But corner is so extremely difficult to play in the NFL now. With all the rule changes, it's so heavily focused on offense and putting up points and, the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, and you can't hit anybody or you can't grab anybody. And he's dominant week over week over week. I am so impressed with Sauce Gardner and with Breece. Like he's someone who maybe started a little slow in the first 2 games or so, and then has really turned it on. As you mentioned, the last 2 weeks, 97 rushing yards, over 100 receiving yards last week against the Dolphins. This week comes out, goes over 100 rushing yards. And really, like offensively, he was the reason why they won that game. It was the run blocking and Breece Hall. I like Michael Carter too, but I think myself and a lot of people were saying that, eventually this is going to turn into like a 60-40 split because Brees is just that good. Like I like Michael, but you got to feed this guy the rock.
It could be
And
70-30.
yeah, and we're seeing why that is because he is just so dominant with the ball in his hands. He runs hard. He's fast. He's big enough to move through people. I'm impressed week over week.
Yeah, and you mentioned Michael Carter, and that was so big. I thought, in the fourth quarter, Brees Hall just pounding it, pounding it. He's so fast, but he's also a bull. It was a few weeks ago. Saleh put it out in one of his pressers. He said one of his favorite things about Brees, what he's learning right now in the NFL, is not just to try to go, side to side, but put your shoulder down and go through dudes. And he's doing that now. And man, he wears the defense down. And we saw that with Michael Carter. I remember it was sometime, if you remember that, in that fourth quarter, he had that run to the sideline where he cut back. Man, he looked faster than every defender on the field because they were gassed. He was coming in with those twinkle toe legs, ready to go because he was, got all his energy. Man, the two of them, underappreciated, easily could be, if not, going to be the best running back duo in the league. And Brees, man, again, the last 2 weeks, he's been the best running back in the NFL, and he's just starting his career.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like the Jets I did a video on it this morning. They have the favorites for both offensive and defensive rookie of the year. Like that's unheard of. Like this,
and
I
thought it was going to be Garrett, honestly, if it was offensive rookie of the year after week 2 in that huge game. Man, Brees has been unbelievable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought the same thing. And then Garrett's kind of went a little quiet. And it's kind of like the game script. The last 2 weeks, they've been up and they've ran the ball so much. I think, a lot of people, and I'm sure maybe we'll get into this, a lot of people are probably worried about Elijah Moore and his comments and him just not really getting the ball a lot the last few weeks. But I think it's been working. The offense is working. They're running. And when teams try to adjust and they'll stack the box, which is coming, then that's when you can take your deep shots down the field. And, they have a lot of ways where they can beat you on offense, which is fun. I love it.
Yes, I definitely want to talk about Elijah Moore. But before we move on from Sauce, I've had this take that I've been developing, like thinking it over these first few weeks. And first, this last week confirmed it for me. And probably gonna think I'm a little crazy at first, but give you the take first. I truly believe, from watching what I've seen, that I think that Sauce Gardner could, not yet, as a rookie, first few games, but could become the greatest cornerback to ever play in the NFL. And I know you guys are like, oh my God, hold on, wait a minute, Harrison, before we stop unsubscribing. What about Darrelle Revis, right? And I love Darrelle Revis. I'm a huge Revis fan. Please don't get me wrong. Love Darrelle. Nobody was a better boundary cornerback than Darrelle Revis. He played the sideline like it was a second defender. He was amazing. I love Darrelle. But go back to Darrelle's rookie year. He wasn't doing what Sauce is doing. Like Sauce's, when he came out of college, everyone was talking about the 1,000, plus coverage snaps without a touchdown. What I thought was more impressive was his career college completion percentage was lower than if you were throwing it in the dirt. So what that means, it's statistically smarter to not even try to throw it his way, which is the definition of a lockdown corner. I figure, like you mentioned, Matt, running backs come into the league, it's a running back. But corners have to cover the best wide receivers in the NFL. It's a position that requires time to learn. We figured that was going to be the case, but it's unbelievable. I think Sauce Gardner's pass rating allowed in man coverage is like a 17 point something. Like, it's insanity. He's putting up 30-something passer ratings. He's literally showing in the NFL already, 6 weeks into the NFL, that it's already statistically smarter to not even go his way. I think back, Revis was unbelievable, but he wasn't doing that immediately. Jalen Ramsey, nobody was. So obviously he's not there yet. But man, from what we see with Sauce, with these numbers that he's putting up as a 5-6 week rookie, I think if he keeps this up, man, we could have the greatest corner of all time right now on the New York Jets.
Yeah, that's really exciting when you put it that way. And I'll say this with the comparison to Darrelle Revis, just isolating rookie seasons. Sauce Gardner has been more impressive as a rookie. Now Sauce is going to have to take multiple steps forward to be the best corner of all time. Because in my opinion, obviously we're a little biased with being Jet fans, but a lot of Jet fans will say too that Revis is the best corner of all time. And just what he was able to do in that 2009 season, especially. But Sauce is just he's great. And if you're getting even 75% the player that Darrell Rivas was, that's more than a home run. But as you mentioned, he's been so impressive this year. It's rare that you see a rookie corner come in and be this good right away. You mentioned Jalen Ramsey, not this good not that good right away.
I can't think of
Darrell Rivas,
anyone. Like I
no,
literally just can't.
no. And since to like another thing too, I talked about earlier on my channel today with talking about the defensive rookie of the year. It's very rare for a corner to win it. Since 2000, only Lattimore and Peters have been the only two rookies to win it at that position. But with how Sauce is playing right now, I think he's making an extremely solid case for him to do just that. He's a top 10 corner in the sport right now, no questions asked.
Yeah, which is crazy. Like like you mentioned, like that's how I approach it. We all knew Sauce was going to be great, but he's got to cover the Tyreek Hills. He's got to cover the Jalen Waddles. He's got to cover these great receivers that are making lots of money. I expected a learning curve. I really did. I didn't expect 32 completion percent passer rating allowed, like literally every week. I think 40 something was his highest passer rating allowed yet. And we saw week 3, he shut down Jamar Chase, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, who just had the best week of any receiver there was last week. He was shut down by Sauce. And in the Steelers game, he shut down the whole team. Like it was like I think Michael Nanion made a joke about that. He's like was doing his Lost in the Sauce thing, and I'm like, he's like, I don't know who to give the credit to because it was everybody. So I think he just wrote everyone. Like, man, it's unbelievable. Like I'm like, again, like you said, it's way too early, way too early. But what we're seeing right now in a 5-6 week sample for a rookie, like you said, playing corner against the best receivers in the league. It's insane. Like it's crazy. And to think that what he's doing right now is just him getting started, right? This is him just starting his career. Like everyone else got to this point. He's starting there. And that's just what is insane to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what's the bar now that he set it, this high so early? I think that's a great point. And it's crazy to think just within this Jets team in general, whether it be Sauce, whether it be Brees, or any of these young guys, they're so early in their careers and they're playing to such a high level right away. It's impressive, and that's why they're 4-2 right now, is because they're getting this quality of play this early in their careers.
Yeah, appreciate all you guys in the chat. We got Adam there from New York Sports Work and Media. Had him on the show. He's freaking awesome. I love chatting with Adam. Saying good day to be a Jet fan. It is. It's like we said with the Packers game. It's just I feel like, and I can't stress this enough. Like it just feels like, I don't know if you noticed it. It just feels like they always try to take it away from us, right? Like they always try to spin it like, oh, it's not that big. We're 4-2. I think right now, until Monday night's game happens, we're sitting in like 3rd in the AFC. Like we only have 5 teams in all of football that even have a better record than us. This is absolutely amazing, man. And again, this was a huge quality win. The great teams have come into Lambeau and they always lose. We always lose before 2006. It's our time, baby. And what I love, which is great, we're talking about how the Jets arrived. I love Zach Wilson. If you remember last week, Zach Wilson's thing was when they asked him about how great the Jets were playing, he said, we just got to keep winning. He's like, the season's still young. We have to keep winning. We can't get focused on the fact that we're doing well now. We got to keep stacking them up, keep playing well. Well, I love it. He said the same thing. He literally repeated for us. And the way I look at it as for him, you want that. You want the mentality. So for the fans, what he said, after the game was he said that, and I love it. I absolutely love what he said. He said, kind of like what we're saying with the Jets arriving. He said that, that, you can't get too focused and think that we've arrived or we've gotten there. We got to keep winning. I'm actually going to bring up the exact quote because I want to give you guys the exact one. Here we go. Right here. So. Okay. Oh, that's weird. I can't seem to find it. That's interesting. Here we go. So we can't feel like we've arrived or anything now. We've got to keep going. We've got to keep getting better. We've got to learn from these wins. And what I liked was he mentioned that we have to be able to throw the ball better. He acknowledged that. He said that, we were leaning on the running game, that the running game was going well, but we've got to be two-dimensional, be able to throw and run. So I love that from him. I love that he's like, can't get too focused on this, can't feel like we've arrived. We got to keep winning. The season's still young. We got to keep going. But for us fans, man, that's for us, what we can get excited about that. You know what I mean? Like for us Jet fans, and that's the best part. Like I think we've talked about it. I forget. I think you same as me. I've been a Jet fan my whole life. Like, my grandfather was a Jet fan. My dad used to take me to games all the time. Like I've been like all of us suffering through this, suffering through all the bad, all the issues we've had, all the problems, feeling that eventually it's going to turn around. So like I put it out on Twitter. I pointed out, I felt this morning, and I don't know if you guys would agree, when I woke up, it was like a different feeling. You know what I mean? Like it was it felt different. Like it felt like, like what we were just saying, that we're turning it around. That we always talk about turning it around. We're there. You know what I mean? Our time is finally now. We've reached it with this win. And it's outstanding. Like you said, man, it's a good day to be a Jets fan.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I don't know. Jet fans have been told for so many years now that their team's awful and that they stink. And you know what? For a while, that was the truth. They weren't very good for a very long time. But, all off season and really last year, we started to buy in with this young team and this young staff and say, hold on a second. The future's bright here. 4 picks in the top 40. And those picks look like home runs right now. And again, it's going back to the young guys really taking that next step. And every Jet fan should be enjoying these wins. They're 4-2. It doesn't matter how you get there. You're 4-2. They had an outside shot to be the number 2 seed. If Kansas City somehow won that game yesterday, the Jets would have been the 2 seed in the AFC, which is nuts to say. But they're playing really good football right now. And, you look ahead on their schedule before the bye, there's a couple more winnable games here. There's no reason that you can't compete with Denver. They're a better team than the Denver Broncos are. Their coach is terrible, and Russell Wilson's been awful so far this year. And then you get New England at home. There's no reason that the Jets can't compete with New England at home. Sure, Buffalo before the bye is an extremely tough test. I think they're the best team in football. And, asking to beat Buffalo might be tough, but who knows? If you win these next 2 games, you're sitting pretty at 6-2 going into that game. So I just think they need to keep their head down and to keep taking care of business. And I like it that it seems like they are all kind of on the same page with that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. Like that's exactly how I felt. Like it's again like different mentality from the players, from Zach. That's what you want to hear. Not that we made it. You want to hear that we got to keep going. The season's still young. We have to keep winning, keep stacking them up. Like you said, it's not like we haven't arrived yet. We have to get there. But for us, it's like, yeah, it's awesome, man. It's absolutely great. It feels awesome. Like I mentioned, it just felt different this morning. It's just waking up, realizing we beat the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau, something most teams can't do. Changes, again, the whole trajectory of the way we look at this team. And talking about that game, I noticed for the whole first half of the game, a lot of people were like on Twitter, talking about Zach Wilson, the fact that the offense wasn't getting going, making comments that the score was really low. If you guys, you guys who follow me on Twitter, excuse me, I had it from a totally different perspective. I was loving it. I was like, we're in an old school defensive matchup with, again, a quality team, a future Hall of Fame quarterback, a well-coached team, a team with a good offensive line, good running game, excellent defense. We were going toe-to-toe. Defensive matchup. We weren't scoring, but they weren't scoring. Our defense, and we've been talking about it for weeks, Sauce and DJ, outstanding, just outstanding. The best corner duo in the league. It's a fact because they're the only 2 corners on the same team that are in the top 10. So it's that simple. They are the best corner duo in the league. But we talked about the safeties not looking great. The pass rush was, there some weeks, there not some other weeks. I always felt like our linebackers were really good. But adding in Quincy, man, the whole defense was just amazing. I was watching it. I was like, I tried to remember the last time the defense as a whole looked this promising. And I honestly had to go back to like the Rex Ryan days. You know what I mean? Like where everything was hitting on all cylinders. And I felt like, you watch this defense. I thought the linebackers were playing really well. Corners that were playing excellent. If the safeties and pass rush could get there and the run defense can get there, this thing can be perfect and beautiful. And we saw that. Again, they went toe-to-toe. An old school defensive matchup, an old school grind and grind, pound for pound, with a team that's a quality team. So, man, I don't know about you, but I had a totally different approach. A lot of people were like, feeling like, where's the offense? I'm like, this is a great defensive matchup. We wanted our defense to play well. Well, here it is. Look what they're doing.
Yeah, for me, it was just, okay, the defense is keeping the Jets in this game. Like, obviously, against the Packers, you think if you only have 3 points at the half, you're probably in a bad spot. But, it was tied going up into halftime. And then my thought was, okay, just continue at this pace. Obviously, holding Aaron Rodgers to just 3 points for an entire game is extremely difficult. But just start to do a little something on offense, and that would change everything. Because we talked about it already on this show, but they were downright dominant on special teams and on defense. They were by far the better team. Obviously, we're struggling offensively, but I mean, credit to this coaching staff for making the changes at halftime. They really focused on the run, and that's where I think they really set the tone and took this thing to the next level. So I'm the same way. I was positive going into halftime. I thought that they absolutely had a chance, and I wasn't down on this offense. I think they're young, and they've shown that they're better in the second half, and sometimes they start slow. So I think you just have to live with that a little bit as a young team.
Yeah, and it's not even just that. It's funny. It's like perspective, right? Like we can all acknowledge the Jets defense is playing really well and holding Aaron Rodgers, a future Hall of Fame quarterback, to nothing. But then why can't we acknowledge that the Packers defense is holding a young Zach Wilson who doesn't even have the experience and quality of Aaron Rodgers? If our defense is holding him, why is it crazy that their defense is holding Zach? And that's what we were seeing. We were seeing really, really good play by the Packers. Zach Wilson acknowledged it, and Robert Saleh acknowledged it. They said that their secondary is really good, and we knew that coming in. So that's why Zach didn't make a huge amount of throws. I liked what I saw in him. I know, a lot of people didn't, but I felt like him escaping the pocket was really good in that game. I felt like his ability to sense the pressure, get out of the pocket, and something I noticed just a few weeks back, and you noticed the same thing. A big thing I noticed with his rookie season, like most quarterbacks would do, he tries to make the play with his feet. What I noticed his first game back 3 weeks ago, and it was the biggest thing I noticed, I don't feel like a lot of people did, whenever he escaped the pocket, he consistently, instead of going for the run, even if it was open, he reset his feet and tried to find the open receiver deep. And I loved that because that's progression. That's what you want to see in a young quarterback. I feel like they've been coaching him to doing that. And I notice a lot of people are saying, well, oh, why didn't Zach run for that short run yesterday? I feel like that's a part of it, that they're trying to get him instead of running. Because I know some people are saying like, oh, it's his knee. I don't think that's the case. Zach said weeks ago his knee is 100%. He's not even thinking about it. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more this, in a way, an overcorrection because they're trying to teach him not to do that. So what he needs to now do as the intelligent quarterback is to find that balance, to find the balance of when to set my feet and try to find the throw and when to potentially run it. And we saw like 2 weeks ago that run into the end zone head first. Man, he still got it. He's still going to do that, but they want him to try to find the guy. And we know we've seen it with Mahomes so many times and all the guys. When you reset your feet like that and look downfield, when you have a cannon of an arm, that's when magical stuff happens. That's when you find Garrett or Elijah open 50 yards deep because no one saw that you were going to cut like that out of the pocket. So I love it, man. I feel like that's something that was underappreciated, especially a few weeks ago, because every time he did it, no one was open. So if you noticed, was he went out, reset his feet, threw it out of bounds. Went out, reset his feet, threw it out of bounds. So people weren't noticing because he wasn't hitting anybody. But I loved that. So that was a big thing that I noticed with Zach.
Yeah, he's definitely keeping his eyes down the field more. I think last year when he was trying to escape the pocket, it was almost like bail and then panic. I don't think we've seen as much panic this year. I will say, I think the first half was tough, but in the second half, he made some big time throws. There was the slant to Corey Davis, the nice play to Tyler Conklin over the middle, the rollout 40-yard throw to Corey Davis was a good one, and that's kind of reminiscent. He escapes the pocket, rolls out, doesn't run,
and finds the guy.
Yeah, and finds the guy. And sure, eventually, yes, we'd like Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore to get worked in and be a little bit more involved. I think they'll get there, but this offense is so far from its fullest potential, and it's exciting to just see like them scraping the surface. And with Zach, the last 2 weeks, they've only really needed him to manage the game. He hasn't turned the ball over because they've ran the ball so well. They didn't need him to throw a lot, but they needed him to throw against Pittsburgh, and he led 2 touchdown drives in the fourth quarter. So I think people are being a little bit too critical right now, and there's still 11 more games this year. So I want to see what he does the rest of the way before deciding that, oh my God, they don't trust him to throw, or one of those crazy takes.
And I couldn't agree more. It seems like what they're doing now, at least, again, game plans change. That's the whole point, right? We call for LaFleur and Obrick to be adaptive and creative, and then we, make a comment if they do it one way or the other. They went into this game knowing the secondary was going to be a problem, so they leaned heavily on the running game, and it opened up in the second half. Brees made it happen. Michael Carter made it happen, and it opened up the passing game, like you mentioned, for him to find Corey Davis. I think it's going to, there's going to be games, like for example, Denver. That would be a game where we're probably going to see more passing because they have a really good run defense. So that might be a game where we see a little more leaning on the passing, but it's going to be, like Zach said, it's going to be two-dimensional. You're going to see the pass and the run. You mentioned people getting down on Zach, like last week, for example, even this week, last week. He only had 210 yards, but he only threw the ball 21 times. He averaged 10 yards a throw, so he averaged a first down every time he threw it. He didn't have a touchdown, but he also didn't have a pick. He's playing smart football. I know everyone wants to see those big games, but I think it's just like, when we talk about Elijah Moore, it's kind of like same thing like what Robert Saleh said. It's going to come. That's going to come.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to come, and it's really dependent on these scripts and in the games. They've been up in the second half, so they're not really throwing the ball the last couple of weeks. But there'll be games where he's going to have to throw the ball 35 times, and hopefully then you're seeing the 250, maybe 300-yard passing games and multiple touchdowns. It's working right now. It's hard for me to be critical. I think he's doing just enough right now, and it's only a 16th start still. And it's obvious to me that he's a better player than he was last year. He's obviously not to the point where we want him to be. I think you're lying to yourself if you're saying that you're okay with this being finished product, Zach Wilson. But it's very obvious that he's taken a big step in the right direction this year, and I just want to see how he plays the rest of the way.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And what I feel with Zach Wilson, finished product is when we see 300 and change to 400 yards a game, 3 to 4 plus touchdowns. Like, I think that day's coming. That'll be finished product Wilson. But again, it's, it takes time. Not everyone, and I love it, we could say it about Jet players, not everyone's going to be Sauce Gardner. Not everyone's going to come out and be an absolute all-star the second they hit the football field, which again, just craziness. Is crazy how good he's been. Just absolutely crazy how good he's been. But you mentioned the Elijah Moore situation. That was an interesting one. So as you guys know, Elijah Moore didn't have any targets yesterday. Rich Cimini went to Twitter and pointed that out. And what was kind of crazy and surprised me was it elicited an Elijah Moore reaction. Elijah Moore actually tweeted back on what Rich Cimini had said. So Elijah Moore had said, if I say what I really want to say, I'll be a selfish guy. We're winning. I'm grateful. It's a huge blessing. It's all I ever wanted. It's bittersweet for me, but I'll be solid. So I'll just stay quiet, but just know that I don't understand either. So he followed that up, though, by saying, I support all my teammates 100%. They know it's what it is. I'm behind them like no other. Everyone's rocking out, needs to keep rocking out. That's part of why we're winning. Don't get it confused. See, he gets it. I mean, he understands, it's an offense with a lot of moving parts, a lot of weapons. But he's frustrated. He in that first kind of tweet he put out, that it was interesting. People pointed out in the comments as well. He's kind of saying, I'm not going to say it, but you kind of are. You kind of are in the way you're wording it and what you're saying. I mean, you're like, I don't want to say it, but you are. You are saying it. You're saying, I don't get it. I'm frustrated. So they asked Robert Saleh about it today. It came up in the press conference, and Robert Saleh laid out an essay. Robert Saleh gave a 2-minute thing on Elijah Moore, and I was listening to the whole thing, and it was so great. I was like, man, I can't tweet this. There's just so much here. So what I did was I took a Google Doc and I put the whole thing. It took a long time. It was deep. Again, he said so much. I put the whole thing in there and put it out on Twitter. I believe a lot of you guys saw it, but just to read it with you guys quick, because it was a really, really excellent statement. I feel like it was the perfect statement for a head coach to make. And I noticed, again, I didn't look at what the beat writers put out. Some people said in the comments they appreciated it, that it seemed like some people took it out of context into what Robert Saleh said. But I feel like when you look at the whole thing, it paints the whole story. So he said that me and Elijah Moore have had conversations. He's fine. He's a competitive young man. Like everybody, he wants to contribute. And sometimes we think our contributions are from production only, but they can come from a variety of different things in terms of the way you show up to the building, the way you lead, the way you communicate with your teammates, the effort you put on the field. There's a million ways to contribute to this football team. He's a competitor, and all he wants to do is contribute. So I've got no problem with Elijah. He's one of our high character individuals, love him to death, and eventually the production part of it that he's been hoping for will come. He's just got to continue to work. And that's perfect. That's exactly so. I think he's saying, because again, I know I kind of felt this way yesterday, talked about in the show I was on with Gino, because it literally just happened before we went live. I don't think Elijah Moore is a problem. I know he's a high character guy, but it makes you wonder why he felt the need to take it to social media, especially with things grooving so well with the team, all the camaraderie we have. You don't want to see anything that can kind of derail that. So they pushed Robert Saleh a little bit more on, asking about, well, what about Elijah taking it to social media? See, he said it's social media. You'd love for everybody to be perfect. I'd love to be perfect. I love my family to be perfect. It's a learning lesson for everybody. I don't think he's got any bad intentions. I don't think he's got a bad bone in his body, but ended it. But once you put it out there, it's out there. So I think it's an interesting situation. And Matt, I'd love to hear what you think. Again, there's a lot to it. That's why I wanted to give it all out. And again, Saleh gave like an amazing answer. And I was like, I don't want to cut any of that out because, it shows the context of what he's saying. It shows it so perfectly. So that's why I put the whole thing out, and it shows, how, I'd love to hear what you think, Matt. You please tell me.
Yeah. I think for me, like, I wish he didn't tweet that. I wish he kept that to himself. But I understand the frustration. Like, I agree. I don't think he's being utilized properly. For some reason, it feels like he's being used on routes like 20 yards down the field, where I think he would be best working in the slot, doing some intermediate stuff over the middle, get him the ball in his hands, and let him do his magic. He's unbelievable with the ball in his hands. So, with that being said, I think him vocalizing that might raise a little flag to Saleh and LaFleur and say, all right, maybe we need to get this guy some design touches. I mean, they feel like they do it to Braxton Berrios every week with the end around, and it's worked really well. But Elijah's just as good with the ball in his hands. Why not throw him a screen? Why not use him, on an end around? It worked last year. He scored a touchdown on an end around last year. So I think in this upcoming week against the Broncos, we'll see him get a couple design touches and kind of get him like, all right, we're going to get you satisfied a little bit here and try to work you in. But he's too talented of a player for this to continue for an entire season. I think it's just going to take some time.
Yeah, Ant definitely agrees. Ant saying definitely Maddie should be involved. I don't know if you guys felt this way. We were kicking butt so well. Again, beating a Green Bay Packers team in Lambeau. I knew he wasn't involved, but I didn't even realize he had 0 targets. I was just so excited with the win. I was just so excited with the win and beating the Packers. I didn't even think about it until I saw Cimini put it out and was like, oh, and I went back. He's like, yeah, he didn't have any targets. Like not even one through the whole game. So we talked about it yesterday, and I was thinking about it. It's the first time, you start to think about it. And I could be wrong, but my thought was that from what we see with this team, it feels like we're seeing, just the way they're doing it, very heavily on the outside, Garrett Wilson and Corey Davis, which again, not saying there's anything wrong with that. That's a great combination. And Corey Davis is a guy that's really been, flying under the radar for a lot of people. I know a lot of people thought, he might have been traded for a little while, but Saleh said he's an integral part of this offense, and he's shown that. He's come back and won games for us. He is an integral part of this offense. So just going back to, what I've seen the last 2 weeks, feels like we're heavily seeing mainly Garrett Wilson and mainly Corey Davis on the outside, which makes sense. I mean, Garrett Wilson has so much potential. We talked about Corey. And then we're seeing primarily Berrios in the slot. So it feels like, as of right now, Elijah Moore is kind of like the backup outside guy, backup slot guy. And that kind of feels like, maybe, again, I could be wrong, but it feels like that's what kind of the problem is, because we're seeing a heavy mix of Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, and Berrios, but not Moore. So I don't know if we know Moore's great in the slot. I mean, when we drafted him, he was one of the best slot receivers in college. I don't know if it's put him in over Berrios, maybe do 4 wide receiver sets with him on the inside more. He showed last year he can line up on the outside, maybe seeing him more there, but that's what it feels like to me, that he's losing out on the outside to Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson, and Berrios is getting the inside spots, and he's just not a part of it for some reason.
Yeah, and the last few weeks, specifically this week, I think was his lowest snap percentage so far this year. I think part of it is, what we talked about earlier with them running the ball so much. He's not like a bigger guy who's going to block. Like obviously Corey Davis, you want him in there to block as a wide receiver in the run game. That's one of his strengths. Again, this is a guy who's extremely talented. I think he's at his best when he is in the slot. So that's what I would try to do to remedy this, and just try to create, LaFleur is very good at scheming guys open. I just don't think he needs to be, pulling these guys 20 yards down the field on these deep and long developing routes. I would try to, get the ball out of Zach's hands quickly and get it into Elijah's hand and then let him do work with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, it's weird because, I was thinking about it again yesterday, we've been giving the defense so much crap for the rotation on the defensive line. They're constantly rotating guys in and out to the point where it feels like sometimes we don't even know who's in anymore, right? Like we're watching, we're like, oh, wait, I thought he was there. Like they're rotating guys so fast on that D line, but it doesn't feel that way on the offense, right? I mean, unless you feel differently, but I feel like with the offense, again, we're seeing heavy Corey Davis and Garrett on the outside. There's no real mixing it around. People thought, oh, well, even Mims might be active because we're going to have a heavy rotation. But even Elijah Moore's not getting involved. So I find it so interesting on the defense. We see these constant moving pieces, but it feels like that's not really the case on the offense.
Yeah, I definitely think that we're kind of just seeing who Zach is the most comfortable with right now. Like it very much still feels like he has a good connection with Corey Davis, and the tight ends. It feels like he's pretty comfortable with, but for whatever reason, it's taking a little bit to get comfortable with Elijah Moore and oh my God, Garrett Wilson. Duh. But Braxton's another guy who he's very comfortable and confident in. And I feel like since he's come back, that's where the offense has kind of shifted and kind of focused on those guys. But I think it just takes time. Again, the season's still very early. They haven't reached the halfway point of the year. I think they'll go through a stretch. Like Elijah Moore, there was a 5-game stretch where he's on pace for like 1,200 yards and, so many touchdowns. He's too good of a player to be this ineffective. I'm saying ineffective in air quotes because I don't think it's really that he's ineffective. I think it's just usage, but they'll get him involved. I'm not really worried about it.
Yeah, no, yeah. And like Ann says, we could run Wildcat for like here, just keep winning. That's really it, right? I mean, we're winning right now. So we want Elijah Moore to be involved. We want him part of this offense. But hey, if Garrett Wilson and Corey Davis are doing the job on the outside, the Jets keep winning, and the passing game comes alive, are we really going to care as much if we keep winning?
No.
Interesting thing. Yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah, I mean, yes, that's the important thing to think about. We just want to keep winning. We just want to keep putting those W's up. So it's interesting. Like, I mean, last year, like I was one of the people when they said Elijah Moore was going to be an outside guy. I'm like, he's 5'8". Like, I love his mentality, but I just didn't see it. I didn't see it happening, but he proved me wrong. And I talked about that throughout the whole season. We were watching him line up against quality corners like CB1s, and he was going back and forth. He was holding his own. So I was like, man, him and Garrett Wilson are going to be a hell of a duo. But Corey is he's become the guy. Saleh talked about it, that he really looked like the guy in the training camp, and it just wasn't translating those first few weeks. He said it's really great that it's starting to translate now, and we're seeing him. And he's made some really crucial plays. He's a big factor in this offense right now.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. He absolutely is a big factor, and it's working. So I'm not looking to change that.
No, without a doubt, man, without a doubt. So I thought this one was interesting. I don't know if you heard of it. So Robert Saleh, they asked about the culture that he brings in to the Jets. And I love this. He said the one thing that we always talk about and always focus on is our style of play. He said our style of play is effort, technique, and violence. I was like, oh, Robert Saleh. He's like, those are the 3 things we want to see jumping off the tape. It feels like that part of our game is just getting better and better. That translates to the fourth quarter part. He talks about how, we've been a great fourth quarter team. Said in the last 2 games, we seized the moment, really shut the game down in the fourth quarter. I like this. He said he added the mindset that they have is to just stay with it and do it right longer. He said that's a big mindset they have. He said he got it from Kyle and San Fran. Now, we saw in the beginning of the season, right, that Browns game coming back, even when Zach wasn't there, this is a team that has the fight. Like, they don't give up. There's no back down. There's no surrender. And now, finally, this last week, we saw that pivot. We saw it going from, well, let's fight from behind to we're going to kick some ass and take some names and take the lead. So, man, this is just absolutely great. I'm loving this.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love that mentality from Robert Saleh, and you're starting to really see what he's establishing an identity, which is something they've lacked for a really long time. They play fast, they play aggressive, and it's been a ton of fun so far. I think you got to give this staff a ton of credit. They've really turned it around after a slow start in the first 3 weeks, but they've been great.
Yeah, and we were talking about Sauce before. I just remember this one. I really do feel that way, man. I think about it, and I'm like, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. The numbers, what he's putting up, the way he's playing at the beginning of his career against top receivers in the league, it's insanity. And we saw just yesterday, I love this part, we saw him with the cheese on his head. I put that as the picture for the episode. But I thought what was so great was what he said. They're like, "Why'd you do that?" He's like, "Oh, the Jet fans put it on my head, so I just ran with it." In that moment, I was like, it was like we knew, but it's like Sauce Gardner is so incredible, and he's ours. You know what I mean? Like they put the cheese head on his head, and he's like, "I love it." He's running around the field. He's ours, man. He loves the Jet fans. The Jet fans love him. This is great. We have what could be the greatest corner to ever play the game on the New York Jets.
Yeah, it's been great having the pleasure to watch him so early in his career, and it's very obvious that the fans love him as they should. And that's what we saw in Lambeau. We saw Brees Hall do the Lambeau leap into Jet fans. We saw them put the cheese head on Gardner. It's been fun.
Yeah. So Willie points out how Zach missed a month. That's big to, just a few weeks ago when they asked Sal about how Zach was playing after I think it was week 1 or week 2. He pointed out that Zach Wilson still, excuse me, I think now it's been a full season after today, but he still hadn't played a full season yet. Like I think this last game was his first full season. Like for all intents and purposes, like he almost is still a rookie. So we see the growth, we see the development. I love what I'm seeing, man. I really do. I feel like I'm seeing the progression. I feel like he's making, like you said, smart decisions, good reads, good throws. We're not seeing him put the game on his back, but that's because I don't think they want to do that yet. They feel like, the team is developing around him. Man, I'm really excited in what I'm seeing so far. Again, I feel like, we're 4-2. This is incredible, man.
Yeah, it's been an absolute blast to watch. And as we said at the top, no one expected them to be in this point. So you're playing with house money right now.
Without a doubt. So we talk about, the pass rush. Talk about that a little bit. So I felt what was great, the pass rush really came on this week. We saw it come on, week before against the Steelers, not as much against the Dolphins. It was very flaky, right? That was the thing we had last year. Last year, the pass rush was there sometimes, not there other times. This defense, we knew, Sauce and DJ, like we were saying, just absolutely locking it down. The best corner duo in the league. That, man, we felt like if that pass rush could be there, this defense would be lights out. And I feel like that was one of the biggest factors. Like, I feel like in yesterday's game, one of the biggest factors, linebackers were really good. Having Quincy back was huge, and we can talk about that as well. But the corners have been playing great. The safeties continued to play well. But that pass rush, man, it was there. And what was awesome with it being there, I noticed we were getting a lot of pressure just rushing 4 guys. We weren't having these crazy blitz packages. We had rotations of them, but everybody was feasting. I mean, Quinnen was in there, Rankins was in there, JFM, Carl, even Jacob Martin, everybody, Huff, everybody was feasting. Literally everyone was eating. And man, the fact that we can keep, like we were commenting, on not liking this rotation on the defensive line, but it feels like on Sunday, we saw what it could do because those guys were just continuously coming at Rodgers through the whole game. And they were fresh, and there were so many of them.
Yeah, I think it's really key for this defense to get home with their front 4. I think with how they're able to cover with Sauce and DJ Reed on the outside and Michael Carter in the slot, I think it makes life easier on that pass rush. And we're finally seeing, like, it took a few weeks, but Carl Lawson shook off the rust. He's been great the last 3 weeks or so. Quinnen's been dominant all year. JFM is just so steady. He's like the unsung hero of that defensive line. And Sheldon Rankins, I mean, I think we have to give him a ton of credit. He's bounced back really nicely after struggling last year. And it's so important in today's NFL to be able to get home with your 4 pass rushers because, if you're blitzing against these good quarterbacks, they're going to find someone open and you're going to get burned. We saw it against the Bengals earlier this year when they tried to blitz and then they got burned on a touchdown because Whitehead couldn't wrap up. So unfortunately, that stuff happens. But when you're getting home with your defensive line in your front, that makes life so much easier.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, man. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like how big that is. Like you said, you don't have to blitz. You don't have to expose something. You don't have to leave somebody open to try to get – if you can continuously get to the quarterback. And the biggest thing, and I know I wasn't the only one, a lot of people were feeling this way, that maybe it was the rotation that was causing the problems. We're like, well, if we have these great guys like Quinnen, play him more. Huff, play him more. Lawson, play him more. But, man, it was everybody. Like, it was literally everybody just feasting on Aaron Rodgers. And we know their offensive line is not bad. That is not – I mean, it's not a great offensive line, but it's also not a bad offensive line. So, man, it was just awesome watching how many guys getting in. You mentioned JFM. I'd love to hear what you think. I feel like just because we have so many quality edge rushers right now, Lawson, JJ will be back soon. Clemens, but Clemens can line up anywhere because he's friggin' Michael Clemens. Martin, we got so many edges. I feel like I want to see JFM like exclusively on the inside. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think he's better on the inside, and with the Jets' depth that they have at the edge position, especially when Jermaine Johnson comes back, I agree. I would like to see that more. I love the versatility that he has. I think he's fine as an edge rusher, but I do think he's better on the interior. So him and Quinnen getting after it up the middle, that's what worked so well in 2020, and I think that's the way to go. And have Carl Lawson and Jermaine Johnson and mix in the guys, mix in Clemens, mix in Huff. Martin, everybody. Vinny Curry came back and played this week. I thought he was good getting involved. So I'm with you.
Yeah, and since you brought that up, Vinny Curry, shout out, Willie Vision. You said the same thing. Should we maybe release Flacco or White to make an extra spot? I don't know about releasing a quarterback. Maybe it's an option, but making a spot, you can make the argument for Curry. I mean, I felt the way, Curry, everyone's like, he's been out for over a year plus. He's not a younger guy. But when we go back to when he played, he was still dominant. Like the last time he played, I'm pretty sure he had 10 quarterback hits that year, which again, for a 30-something-year-old guy is pretty good. So he obviously brings the dynamic of being a leader. Like he's a leader, players gravitate to him. He's a great mentor. We know Carl Lawson was picking his brain in the offseason a little bit. But man, I mean, if he can be another guy that can feast, I mean, there's so much talent. And that's why I felt, I think a lot of fans were agreeing. It sucked that we weren't seeing a consistent pass rush because, we have so much talent and so much money on this defensive line. So, man, watching what they did against the Packers, they showed it. This defense shut down Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, they did. And that takes a lot of guts and you got to give them a lot of credit because at times, even earlier this year, we saw the defense, struggle to stop the run, or at times they were exposed in the passing game, like against the Bengals. But today, this week they really stepped up big. And look, sometimes it's the defense that's going to carry you, sometimes it's the offense. And on Sunday, it was the defense and special teams, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I want to bring up Jenny's comment, but you mentioned, with the defense, it was how I felt watching it. Like again, we saw good corner play throughout the season. This was the first time I felt like I saw great all-around defense, like you were just saying. Like, I haven't seen the Jets defense as a whole look that good in a long time. And that had me really excited.
Yeah, no, for sure. As a unit from top to bottom, I think it's the strongest they've looked in a very, very long time. I agree.
Yeah, so shout out to all you guys in the chat. Love, what you guys think. If you have any comments or any questions, So Jenny brought up, what are your thoughts about the report the Jets are listening to trade offers for Bryce Hall? That's an interesting one. Matt, I'd love to what you hear. What you think first?
Yeah, I really like Bryce Hall a lot. When he was taken in the 5th round, I thought it was great value, and he started for this team, the last couple of years, and I thought he was solid. Obviously, DJ Reed and Sauce is an upgrade, but they being the coaching staff, I think they obviously prefer Brandon Eccles over Bryce Hall. I don't know if I personally agree with that one, but I'd be sad to see him go. But if he's just going to sit on your, scratch list every week, if you can flip him for, a mid-round pick, then I think you do that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to think about because I went, as this season went in again, Sauce is just unbelievable. Like I'm like, he's at the point where like people are going to already start to say that we didn't give him like that we should have given more than a 4th round pick for this kid, like 4th overall pick for this kid. But man, I went into this season feeling that I liked what we had on the outside. I thought Bryce Hall was good. I thought like he was looking like he was becoming a lockdown corner. The numbers he was putting up, he had like 16-something PDs last year. It was the most any Jets player had since like 2013. He was leading the NFL in a lot of categories, like top corner in the league in coverage and man coverage, in PDs, and a lot of really important things. And like you said, 5th round pick. This was a kid I loved. Like in the draft process, I thought back in that year. Obviously, Mekhi Becton didn't work out, but the two guys I really, we can still see what happens. But the two guys I really liked in that draft were Mekhi Becton and Bryce Hall. Like, I really, really liked Bryce Hall because I felt like he was a guy that if he'd stayed healthy throughout his college career, he would have been a top pick. So a 5th round pick, he looked really good. But man, Sauce and DJ, they're it. Like they're absolutely it. And Michael Carter II has been unbelievable as well. The two of them, the three of them are an outstanding group together. So Hall's got a lot of potential. He's young and he's looked really good. That's a selling thing. Again, we know we've seen it with Joe Douglas. He knows how to trade. Like he knows how to wheel and deal. He knows how to, every time a GM gets off the phone with Joe Douglas, they're like, what did I just do? What just happened? Like he just got absolutely taken advantage of. So you can sell Bryce Hall. I mean, he has looked like a lockdown corner. He's put up numbers that have been to the top of the league as a quarterback. You guys who followed me have know I've talked about it and brought those numbers up a lot. That can be a selling point. And again, Sauce is our future. DJ's also a young guy. If Hall's not playing, I hate to see him go. But if you could theoretically get, hell, a third round pick, I think at worst a fourth round pick. Again, with the quality play I feel like he's shown, maybe a desperate team is crazy enough to give a second. I mean, who knows? But I think there's trade value there. Joe Douglas could explore it, and he obviously would if the guy's not being used. But you mentioned Brandon Echols. I thought that was interesting too, that we were seeing more Brandon Echols. Like Hall wasn't even active, and we were seeing a little bit of Echols. But I like Echols, man. I mean, Echols is a guy, runs under a 4.3 40, but also jumps like a 42.5-inch vertical. Like this kid, like, I mean, when we drafted him, I loved his potential. I thought him and Hall were going to be our future on the outside. So if they like Echols more, because again, he is unbelievably fast, can literally cover anybody, and he can jump crazy high. It's like he can cover a receiver that's tall too. We've seen it. Man, if they could get something for Hall, it'd be interesting to see what Joe can do.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you do it because at this point they don't really have a use for him.
Yeah. So, another guy to bring up, Michael Clemens, because he's everyone, throughout the season, we saw him in the preseason and he was so dominant. Right. He had one game with like 7 QB pressures. It was his first game. It was like first in the league. He was everywhere in the preseason, like everywhere. And people started the season going, well, where's he been? So I like this Robert Saleh when they asked him about Michael Clemens after the game. He said Michael Clemens has been under the radar, but he's been playing really well the whole season. He said he's being asked to do all the grunt work, which is something I thought was very interesting. He said he's playing well on defense and special teams. He's doing anything and everything that's being asked of him. I love his mindset and what he brings day in and day out. And we've seen it. They're using him on the inside. They're using him on the outside. They're using him in run defense. They're using him for everything. And I think it's big that Saleh said they're asking him to do all the grunt work. I think that's why we're not seeing like the flashy plays. They're in a way almost using him as that beast to open up somebody like maybe Quinnen getting single teamed or Carl on the outside. So I think he's a guy that's been, like Saleh said, flying under the radar. He's not having the production we saw in the preseason, but I still think there's a really, really bright future for Michael Clemens.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw it on special teams this week. Obviously, they like him enough to play him on special teams, which is really important for, guys who were drafted, on day 3. He was their last pick and a little bit of an unknown. And he came in and he has this, this attitude, not attitude might be a poor connotation, but he has this persona about him where he's so intimidating and such a factor and intimidating guy. And we're seeing that early on in his career. He had a great preseason game against the Eagles. And, I think right now in his small role, it's fine. He's doing everything he needs to do right now.
Yeah, and he's playing dominantly. We're not seeing the sacks of the numbers, but we see him on the field making an impact, playing really tough. And you mentioned it, man, that it's funny, like the mentality with him, because he's got that, scary dude mentality, like scary as hell. But when you hear Saleh and everybody talk about him, they always say that he's like the nicest, sweetest guy, that he's like not like that at all. But man, we hear him talk and he is terrifying, like absolutely terrifying, which is what you want to hear. So like, after the game, when they interviewed him, like same thing, they interviewed him about, playing, in Lambeau. And he said it was cool to see Jet fans coming to support us. And then he took a pause and he's like, in enemy territory. I don't know if anybody else, but just the way he said enemy territory sent a chill down my spine. Like just massive chill. Like I was like, man. But then he's like, he said how he looked up in the stands and felt like we were at home because there were so many Jet fans there. That's something to talk about too. The Jet presence we're seeing at these games. But after that, they asked him, about the statement the Jets made today, and he did the same thing. He took a pause, and that's like the Michael Clemens thing. It's like in that pause, he's got that look in his eyes, like that just terrifies you to your soul, and he's just like, the Jets are coming to play. Period. And it was like, just what every time he's so intimidating in every way, but it's so crazy how everyone says he's just the nicest, sweetest guy, like in real life. So it's just funny, man. But that's interesting with Michael Clemens, but also that Jet presence we were talking about, right? There's such a huge Jet presence at these away games. I would love to hear what you think about that because that's been a big thing people are talking about.
Yeah, the fans travel well and they want to support a good team. And for a while they weren't able to get that, and they're undefeated on the road right now, 3-0 on the road. It sounds crazy to say it, but it's the truth. You love it. You absolutely love to see it. And I think right now they just they want to see a good product, and that's what they're doing. And you have to give them a ton of credit. I thought the Jet fans were great in Lambeau. We saw obviously breeze through the Lambeau leap up into some fans, and they enjoyed a nice win on Sunday.
Yeah, and you gotta love it, man. You gotta love it. Shout out to all the Jet fans, man. All the Jet fans showing up, spending the money to go to the away games. You guys are amazing. We all appreciate you making our voice heard at those games. Man, they were talking about it. They were talking about how loud the Jet fans were at Lambeau Field. I can't remember the last time I've ever heard that sentence before. So that alone is just an awesome, awesome thing. So Harry points out, shout out to Harry. I was literally saying this yesterday. Said literally the same thing, my man. I said that watching Quinnen play, I was like, forget Pro Bowl. I put out literally that Quinnen Williams is playing at an all-pro level. So, Matt, I'd love to hear what you think, but Quinnen Williams is just absolutely killing it right now. He is having an absolute career year from the interior.
Yeah, they needed him to take that step forward, and he's done that and so much more. I agree with you. Right now, it's Aaron Donald and then Quinnen Williams. I think that's the order in terms of interior defensive linemen. He's been downright dominant. In 6 games, he has 5 sacks, 22 tackles. He had 6 sacks last year. He's 1 sack away from tying the number of sacks that he had from last year. He has a very real chance to crack double-digit sacks, which is something that we unfortunately know doesn't happen very, very often. The last time it happened was 2015. So this is a great sign for him, and I think he's going to cash in with a big contract extension.
He deserves it. I mean, he's a guy you want to keep around. I mean, for the longest time, right? Joe Douglas has obviously changed it all around, and that was my big thing. I've been saying, you guys know that it all comes back to Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas is what started this change, and it's just been going in the right direction. But man, just you look at a guy like Quinnen, they've been saying about us for a long time. And again, it's not Joe, but before him, that we don't re-sign our top guys. We don't bring our first round picks back. Quinnen is a quality player, and he's loved here in the organization. He's a guy you need to pay. Now, you need to make money work. And again, just the brilliance. You guys know I've been saying forever that Joe Douglas is a great GM. I've been saying that for years. And one of the things that I felt showed that was the way he designs his contracts. I don't think anybody designs contracts with better outs than Joe Douglas does. Like, this guy is an absolute magical wizard. Like, Laken Tomlinson is a perfect example. He's not having a great year. He's not the worst anymore, but he's not playing at the Pro Bowl level he should be. I can't believe that with the amount of money we're paying him, Joe Douglas built an out in after 1 year. That's just insane. That's crazy of how amazing that is that with him doing. But that being the case, he also built an out in JFM's contract. And I'm not saying, believe me, I'm not saying I want to get rid of JFM, but you need money and you need to allocate it. He's been okay, but he hasn't been living up to the huge contract he got. Maybe Joe Douglas takes that opportunity to restructure him. Maybe not bring Rankins back, restructure him, but find a way to pay Quinnen, because you can't pay everybody along that defensive line. You have to figure that out somehow. But Quinnen's a guy you want to keep. I mean, he's the only one playing at an all-pro level. So I don't know, Matt, what you were thinking, but I feel like what Joe's done, he's put himself in the perfect position to play chess while everyone else is playing checkers, to move all these pieces around and restructure people, even though he's given them big contracts.
Yeah, 100%. We noticed that with the kind of deals he gives out, where they're 3-year deals on paper, but really they're a 1 or a 2-year deal with an out. So it allows you that flexibility, and now you're going to have some guys that you're going to have to pay, like Quinn and Williams will be the first ones to come up, and there's going to be hopefully more if these the 2021 class and 2022 class continues to look the way that it does for years to come. They're going to need new contracts too. So for Quinnen, it's I know they don't really like to. It seems like he doesn't like to keep the McCagnon guys around, but this is one that you just absolutely have to do. He plays a premium position, getting after the quarterback, so I think he's too important to play around with. You got to find a way to get it done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. And he's going into the 5th year, but you got to get him long term. You got to ink that up. I'd like to think it gets done. I do. He's going to get paid. He's going to get a lot of money because, again, like you mentioned, he's the second best interior defensive guy behind Aaron Donald. But like we see with how disruptive Aaron Donald is, that's what Quinnen's going to do. You don't want to see him doing that on another team. You don't want to see him doing that somewhere else. You want us to see something we haven't been able to do for a long time. The knock people have put on us, be able to keep our own guys, keep our own talent in house. So on that one, pivoting it a little bit again, just with the interesting piece of moving pieces around, our offensive line was scary for a while. It was scary because so many guys were hurt, so many guys were out, and we didn't know what we were going to do, and we're trying to makeshift things. What's exciting is within a week or two, we're getting to a point where now we have to figure out what we're going to do because we have so many guys. Right now, we got to figure out, well, what are we going to do because there's all this talent. So I'd love to hear what you think, but well, actually, I'll give mine next. I'd love to hear what you think along that offensive line because George Fant should be, we don't know 100%, right? Anything can happen, but he could be coming back in a week or two. Max Mitchell could be coming back in about 3 weeks to a month, give or take. So it's interesting to see what could happen along the offensive line. I'm curious what you think or might want to do. If you were the GM, how would you approach it?
Yeah, I think ideally you want AVT to move back inside and go back to guard because I think he really has all pro potential at guard. He's done a great job at tackle, but I think he's just better suited at guard. And, Dwayne Brown has played really good so far, but he's not really a long term answer. Lincoln Tomlinson's going to be here for the foreseeable future. McGovern, you have to decide whether you want to keep around or not, but there's a lot of question marks on this line going forward. But for me, I think you just have to be happy with how they're playing right now, especially with, like, for instance, Max Mitchell. I don't think he was expected to play this year, but he came in and looked good before he got hurt. He's probably someone who they are going to look at as a long-term right tackle option. And who knows, maybe you go back to the draft and look for a left tackle there and sign a center in free agency or re-up McGovern. That's something that we're going to have to see play out over the rest of the year. But I really liked what this unit's done. They're finally starting to gel a little bit as it's been the same unit to play together the last couple of weeks. And I've noticed that made a big difference.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing, like you mentioned, especially for right now. Consistency along the offensive line is key. People forget that. You don't want to continue to move guys around. Yeah, you got a guy like AVT that can play anything, which is just, it's amazing. I mean, not enough credit goes to AVT. Like, I loved his answer when they asked him, man. And again, not to crap on George Fant at all. I respect him. Think he is a really good player. I think he was hurt. That's why he wasn't playing as well. Last year, he was great. But if you remember, when we moved him the right tackle, the left tackle, he had something to say, talking about how it took a little time to transition. He had to transition back to right tackle. He wasn't thrilled about that. Man, AVT is willing to do whatever is asked of him. AVT's like, and when they asked him about it, I love it. AVT's like, well, I don't want to be cocky, but I'm so confident myself. He's like, I could play anything. He's like, I could play the whole offensive line. He even joked about it. He's like, I haven't played center or right. I haven't played a center or right. This is before he played right tackle. He's like, I hadn't played center or right tackle yet. But who knows what the future holds? He feels like he can do anything, and he's proven it, man. That guy can literally do anything. So I have a very interesting take along the offensive line. Curious, guys, like I always tell you, feel free to agree, disagree. With me, the biggest thing, I think that consistency with the offensive line is important. But I want to look toward the future. I want an offensive line that's built for tomorrow, one that can grow and develop with Zach Wilson. And you mentioned Max Mitchell. Man, he's been an unbelievable surprise. This kid has been great, like really great, considering he's a 4th-round pick thrown into the fire, not supposed to be starting this year. And when he played, he was holding his own against guys like Justin Houston, against guys like Myles Garrett. He literally set up the game-winning block at the end of week 2's game on Myles Garrett to allow Flacco to hit Wilson in the end zone. So the way I look at it is, and here's my take. So Lakin has been okay. He hasn't been really not even good. We were hoping he'd be great. He'd be at a Pro Bowl level because, again, this is a guy, identical system, right? No different, no change of same terminology, same identical system he played in. I was like, this is great. You're basically putting him in everything he knows in the same spot and telling him to be what he already is. But it hasn't been there. He's looked okay, but not that great. So there's an out after this year. You mentioned moving AVT back to guard. Man, I think Nate Herbig has looked very good. I think Nate Herbig has been a big surprise, and Saleh shouted him out to that. He said that he plays with a very big nasty streak, that he's a nasty player, and it shows in his film, and he plays very physically, and he's earned a lot of love in the locker room. Nate Herbig is only 24 years old. So what I would actually like to see, when Max comes back, put him at right tackle, leave Nate Herbig at right guard. If Lakin's not looking better, you bench him. You put AVT at left guard. Dwayne keeps playing at left tackle for now. You got McGovern at center. And like you said, we should be looking for our future left tackle. We should be looking for that guy in the next draft. And now you have a really young offensive line where we know AVT can play guard, and he's been a Pro Bowler as a guard. He could do left or right side. Herbig's looking good. Again, young guy. Max is looking good, young guy. AVT is looking good, young guy. I want to find a way to keep these three guys as part of that line going forward. And we know Max is great at right tackle. We know Herbig's great at right guard. Maybe, again, we could move on from Lakin and put AVT at left guard. We know he's going to be great there, and potentially draft a left tackle for our future in the next draft. And we have depth at the position. Let's say something, God forbid, happens to Dwayne Brown. You have George Fant when he returns. George Fant can be that left tackle. So there's a lot of interesting moving parts, but it's interesting to see what you can do on this offensive line. But I really feel like I want to see Mitchell, Herbig, and AVT as staples of this line moving forward.
Yeah, it's hard not to feel that way with those young guys. I think what we've seen from them, AVT has been their best player on offense just because of his versatility. And you really got to like what you saw with Max Mitchell early on. Obviously, 4th-round rookie comes in, plays right away, and plays well. I don't know if they would do that with benching Lakin, but
that would be radical.
Yeah, it is. But it's all things are on the table here. I agree though. Herbig has been great. He's came in a tough spot, started at right guard the last few weeks, and has been playing really good football. I like what we've seen from him.
Yeah, week 1, I was like indifferent. I thought, he looked good at times, but then got beat at times. But then I forgot who, but someone reminded me, I think it was Adam. Shout out to Adam. He's like, he was going against Cam Hayward. And I was like, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. And these last 2 weeks, he's been lights out. These last 2 weeks, he's been absolutely awesome. And you're seeing that physicality. He got his helmet knocked off because he was playing so physical. He's getting chippy. So again, benching Lakin would be radical, but I just don't want to see Nate Herbig come out of the mix. And I want to see Max Mitchell back in it, even though George Fant comes back, because he's not part of the future plans. And then you can't have AVT not playing something. So maybe it should leave Lakin at left guard and put AVT at left tackle. Maybe he goes to left guard. I don't know. But my big thing is I like those three guys. I really want to see them part of the future. And we saw, with Mekhi Becton, Joe thought that was going to be the answer, and it didn't work out, right? You can't fault him, right? We know, Mekhi Becton didn't have injury problems in college, right? He came in, he was a top prospect. It hasn't worked out. I think this draft is going to be, you mentioned it, Matt. I think this is going to be a correction to that. I think he's going to go into this draft, potentially take the best blindside tackle in the draft. And then I would love to see maybe with the next pick, 2nd round, 3rd round pick, take a top center and have that guy, work under McGovern for a season or so.
Yeah, that's certainly a way to approach it. It'll be interesting to see how what they decide to do with that offensive line, because I think that's going to be a big storyline this offseason, and how they move things around, because they have some expiring deals and some decisions to make.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So probably a lot of things we've talked about. If there's any topics that you wanted to bring up or any thoughts any things we didn't talk about. Well, one thing actually we didn't bring up is the linebackers. I'd love to hear what you think about that, because having Quincy back, man, was huge. Quincy was all over the field. Like, I love CJ and Quan as a combo. I think they're a really good duo together. I think Quan doesn't get enough love. I mean, when he's healthy, he's one of the better linebackers in the league. But man, Quincy changed that dynamic. Quincy was all over the field. And man, him and Quan are like murderers out there. And I feel like this week, CJ played better than we saw in weeks before. I think it's because Quan and Quincy are just flying around the field doing what they do best. It opened up for CJ to play more of that middle roaming kind of position, and he did it really well. So I'd love to see what you think, but I feel like the linebackers were really good.
Yeah, they were good. That was a good Quincy Williams game. I feel like with him, he's flying around making plays and looks like he did last week, or sometimes I think he get a little over aggressive and blow assignments. But this was a great Quincy week, and the more he plays like this, and the less we see of the missed tackles, which was a problem before the injury, then I think that's obviously better for the long term. I'm a big Quan Alexander guy. I think he's the best linebacker on this team. Unfortunately, his snaps went way down this past week. I think it was under 30%, because you had Quincy was up over 80%, which I would like to see those guys split a little bit more. I think Quan, as I said, I have really high praise and expectations for Quan Alexander, and Mosley's steady. He's really at this point in his career, he's really not that great in coverage, but against the run, this guy can just come down and really make some plays. But that's where I think guys like Quan and Quincy Williams can come in and really make a difference.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. And that's interesting the way you said. Like, when you think about that, you are right. CJ Mosley is still a great player. Salah pointed it out. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but I remember he was saying that, Quincy, that CJ was a leader of this defense. He literally embodies everything that we want. He's got the best attitude, and he's a leader on this team. He's literally the leader of our defense. But man, like you said, he's not as good as he used to be. He's not bad. He's not like the grades PFF were giving him last year. He's not that bad, but he's not what he was. Man, Quan is still in his prime, man. Quan is looking great. The biggest thing is just staying healthy. And Salah pointed that out as well. Salah said, that he knows what Quan was. I played with him in San Francisco. Talked a lot about him, talked about his toughness. He literally said that he brings a different swagger to our defense. And he does. He really does. And the biggest thing for him is staying healthy. But if he can stay healthy, I really want them to keep him around long term. Because, man, him and Quincy, they are like wrecking balls, like Jeff says right here. My thing I'm thinking, and I'm worried about this, if Quan and Quincy hit the same person at the same time, do they die? Like, is that the end of their life? Because the two of them, when they hit people, it's like you hear it through the television, like it's body shattering.
Yeah, the two of them. I mean, that's their strength. They come downhill a million miles an hour, and good luck. If you're a running back in the flat about to catch the ball, you're going to get crushed. Or if you're running back trying to find the hole, you're going to get crushed. And it was, I think Quincy led the team in tackles. He had like 14 tackles this week. He was great. He was all over the field. And Quan was a little quieter this week, but in Quincy's absence, we saw him flying around making those same plays. So you got to love it.
Without a doubt. And I've been saying, I felt like our linebackers were pretty good. I mean, even before we brought in Quan, I thought like when Quincy was healthy, felt like he was underappreciated. Thing was, and he talked about it in the offseason. He said that last year he came in with a different mentality. It was more trying to learn. Like he kind of went under CJ Mosley's wing and tried to learn how to be a leader, how to read certain things. He literally said this year he planned on things being different, that he planned on taking it and stepping it up a notch and being that guy. And he got hurt, and that's what stung because he was looking good before he got hurt. What's crazy is, and thankfully it wasn't that bad an injury. Like, I couldn't believe, like, the dude was carted off the field, and he's back, like, weeks later. Like, thankfully it wasn't that bad an injury. But, man, he thankfully had a really quick turnaround.
Yeah, he did. I was really surprised. When you see the cart come out, usually that's not a great sign. I thought his season was over, which is obviously you never want to see that. But I was glad to see him come back. And in his, debut coming back, he was great. So hopefully more of that going forward.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. So moving on, because we got the game coming up next week. You mentioned with Denver. I don't know if we could talk interestingly about. I don't know if you followed the whole situation with Russell Wilson and these comments that have come out about like how you have to talk to him. Like it's crazy that things like that's what they're claiming is true. So like there were these reports coming out from teammates of his, and they've said this is true for a while apparently, that even his teammates, if you want to get in contact with Russell Wilson, you have to call his agent. I thought that was a joke. Like I was like, that can't be real. Like that's something someone's saying just to, make a joke about stuff. But it seems like it's real. Like there were like other players like confirming and saying, oh no, back in the day, so and so played with Russell in Seattle, and it was the same thing. That's just crazy to me. Like we look at Zach and Zach's a young quarterback, but like he's on speed dial with all these guys. They're in text group chats. They're having parties and bonfires and picnics together in the summer. They're going away together. How crazy would that be if that's true? If that really is true, that Russell Wilson can only be reached by his own teammates through his agent. That's
Yeah,
insane.
that's very strange. If that I didn't hear that, but that's wild. Especially in today's world too. Like everyone has a smartphone. Like everyone is on. Well, most people are on social media. Like you have so much access, and I get like from maybe not wanting to see like the fans or all the hate online, but you're telling me that a teammate can't text you or give you a call or FaceTime or anything like that. That's bizarre.
It's crazy what's going on there. Like I mean, Russell Wilson was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Like this drop off is like, it's not like Denver's not talented, right? We thought he was coming in to an already done system, right? That Russell's coming into this already finished product. What the hell is going on in Denver?
I don't know. I thought they'd be a playoff team, but they don't look too hot right now.
Yeah, Jeff said if that's true. Again, I can't confirm it. I'm not right. I was just hearing this on social media and I saw a bunch of people saying it. And again, can't confirm it, but it seemed like a lot of people were saying, oh, that they'd heard this before and this was a thing with him. It's just crazy, man. But like you said, we could beat Denver. I mean, we could beat Denver. Patriots come to us, and right now they're sitting at the bottom of the division. Like we could have Buffalo coming into the Jets with us being 6-2, and they're coming to us to play in the Meadowlands. So Meadowlands. So if we're 6-2, man, that place is going to be rocking. MetLife, not Meadowlands. Will be rocking.
Yeah, of course. They're looking for a reason to go nuts. We saw it a little bit the last time out against Miami, but first couple games at home were rough. The Ravens game opening week, that wasn't too much fun. They didn't score a touchdown until the final minute, and then against the Bengals, they didn't have a touchdown. It was all field goals. So they got a much more watchable product against the Dolphins, and take care of business the next couple weeks, and it should be a crazy crowd.
I agree, man. I agree. I can't wait. Let's do it. Let's pull this W out, right? Let's go in, right? Let's go into Denver, get the W. We can do it, man. We can do it. Can't wait. So before we get out, if you have any last thoughts, any summations of what you're thinking of, want to share with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit on just about everything, but for me, it's just they're a young and fun team right now, and yeah, Zach Wilson probably hasn't looked like peak Zach Wilson yet, which is fine, but they're winning football games. It's been a ton of fun, and I just think we continue to ride this out.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. So yes, like I mentioned before, just we're 4-2. We're 4-2, and we just beat Green Bay in Lambeau. Something like we said we hadn't done since 2006. Snapped a 15-game winning streak, and that's a Green Bay Packer 15-game winning streak. All things we were saying before that people are going to try to make it out that this wasn't a big win. This was a huge win. This was a culture change win for the Jets. The way the defense played, the way we held in there and shut Aaron Rodgers down, and then adjusted in the second half, opened up the running game and came back and didn't just win, but won big. We won big against a quality team. Man, we're here. The Jets have come. The Jets have arrived. We're ready. All those receipts, right? We've been collecting all those receipts, and now we're going to make everybody in the NFL eat every single one of them. And I just can't wait, man. I am so hyped. We're here. The Jets are here. They're ready to compete. They are as good as anybody. Bring it on, baby.
Love the energy. I love it.
Thank you, man. So if you could let the people know, where they could find you on social media.
Yeah, no doubt. Matt O'Leary NY on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're talking New York Jets. We're talking NFL, trying to keep it light and fun and do a ton of content online. So if you want to follow along, it'd be much appreciated.
So appreciate all you guys tuning in. Appreciate all you guys being here, taking part in the Take Flight Spit and Fire podcast. If you haven't, if you could please subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. But again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Excuse me, we're live every Monday at 7 p.m. So please tune in, always be part of it. Love interacting with you guys, chatting with you guys in the chat, having fun answering your guys' questions. It's an absolute blast. It's an absolute pleasure for me, and I really love doing this. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. We're putting content out during the week. Please check that out, and let's get another W, baby. Let's pull this one out. Let's keep this win streak going.
Love it.